The Accidental Entrepreneur is produced by Beinhacker Law and brought to you through our affiliate relationships with the following sponsors. One of One Productions, the New Jersey-based podcast studio that produces and edits both audio and video podcasts. They sell equipment for the average podcaster and have even created a guesting kit exclusively for our listeners. North Authentic, the conscious hair care marketplace offering the cleanest brands from around the world. The Healthy Place, the e-commerce site with thousands of supplements to help you live a healthier life, along with natural solutions for chronic pain, stress, anxiety, depression, sleeplessness, and much, much more. And be sure to support the podcast by ordering some logo merchandise from our online store. Listen to all of our sponsors' commercials later in this episode and follow their links in the show notes to learn more about their products and services.
We do Reg D filings. About 80% of our opportunities have all been syndications. The other 20 have either been us or partners. Just us or just one other partners where we just buy the opportunities ourselves. But we do Reg D filings. Typically a 506C that does just offer to accredited investors. But sure. We grew up in New York, New Jersey, right? So we had a lot of friends and family that were our initial investors. And, if someone can make $150,000 and not be deemed accredited, but still have the bandwidth all to understand how to invest. And so we did do some 506B opportunities. We still do from time to time. That's just open to our general network, our Rolodex of people who are already in our bandwidth.
And they're run like a fund, right? I mean, they're a corporation, people own shares in the company. Is that how you do it, or are they
similar? The fund model is more, it can be run in a couple parts, but the fund is that investors would invest into a pool, and that pool would be allocated to a number of assets. Through the syndication model, it's a single asset LLC that's set up for the project, where those investors know the project they're investing into. And on that front they can make a choice on the actual asset themselves. But it is like that. They will get shares or units, right, as part of ownership. So they will have equity ownership in the deal. They will not be a debt partner on the deal.
And they're like limited partners. They're like special member unit holders. They don't vote. They don't get involved.
The information provided in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or to be construed as advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals before making any decisions.
The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. People often start a business without much choice, perhaps due to a job loss or just being dissatisfied at work, and they come up with an idea they just know can be successful. They become entrepreneurs by accident. That is to say, their success or failure happens by accident, not with intention. My name is Mitch Beinhacker. I'm a corporate attorney and a business advisor. You're listening to The Accidental Entrepreneur, my podcast about how to achieve success on purpose, not by accident. Join me along with our monthly guests where we share our knowledge and help you get a hold of your business. And now on to today's episode.
Hi, I'm Jason Yarusi of Yarusi Holdings. We're a multifamily investment firm down in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Since 2017, we've acquired over 2,000 units, about $180 million in real estate. And we're excited to be here on the show today to talk about why multifamily real estate is one of the best investment classes out there, continues to perform and outperform year in and year out.
Okay, welcome to another episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. I'm Mitch Beinhacker, and we have another real estate guest today. It just turns out that we have 3 real estate guests on the show today. Episodes will be coming out in maybe a month and a half. And if you are listening on your favorite podcast directory, if you're able to, be sure and leave us a 5-star review. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the like button to allow us to keep bringing the valuable content, which is hopefully helpful to our listeners, to learn how to grow your business, make better decisions, and invest your money, build your wealth. So, Jason, thanks so much for coming here. It's funny. Not only are you the third real estate guy that I spoke to, you're the second guy from Westfield that now lives. Yeah, the other guy lives in DC, I think now. And I don't know if Westfield's like the place you start and then you leave. I have no idea. But it's good to connect with you. I know you got 3 young kids. And you're building a family down outside of Nashville, you said, right?
Correct.
And I'm excited to share and hear your story. Maybe you want to go back where you grew up. You're back. Well, we knew you lived in Westfield. I don't know if this is where you grew up. And then we could talk about how you got into real estate and the things, and then some advice for people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I didn't fact grew up in Westfield. So
there you go. You went to Westfield High School and everything?
Went to Westfield High School, grew up there all my life, ended up moving into New York City for 12 or 13 years. Tremendous to be there as well. After that, I moved back out to Westfield, right? So it's been a great spot, a great part of me and my upbringing. So it was really fun to be. A couple of years ago, my wife actually grew up in Hawaii. Somehow we met in New York City and again, found our way back out to Westfield. So it was a really awesome spot. We just decided that we wanted to just change things up, right? As things happen, right? And so we were looking at different markets, one being Nashville, the other two being Phoenix, and the other one being Denver. And just we Nashville's had been hot. To,
And you know, and I don't think, Jason, it's Westfield. I think it's the Northeast. People want to get out of the hustle and bustle of, stuffing.
I've always modeled that, what's the worst that happens there? We move back to New Jersey, right? And so there's always that part here, but we were looking at those options, and what really stood out is, Nashville, we have properties here. A lot of our properties are basically through really the highway that runs up and down between Georgia, of course, Tennessee and Kentucky, right? So we've invested a lot in Louisville, invested a lot in Atlanta, and then also now here in Nashville. So
was that before you moved there?
Before we had moved, right? Okay. And so we were thinking about Denver and Phoenix and cool markets. However, one of the drivers was like, okay, we're closer to Hawaii, but it wasn't like we can get in a car and drive to Syndicator, right? So, but then we're investing 1,000 miles away from when we were in New Jersey to our markets. So here we are, now we jumped to Phoenix or Denver, and now we're investing 1,000 miles away the other side, right? So we were kind of taking it apart. So we had a bunch of friends down here. I had brought a 93-unit apartment community in a town called Murfreesboro, Tennessee, about a year prior, maybe 8 months prior to deciding we were going to move.
Now, is that because you had friends down there and you had connections, or you had searched out the market? What brought you to the Tennessee real estate?
Yeah, it was one that we had assets here, and Murfreesboro itself. I had friends in the area. I had some friends up in a town called Mount Juliet, another one called Spring Hill, and of course Nashville. We were investing down here, so we said logically, let's move down here, and we'll figure out our own. So we came down here. It's been a great transition, been a lot of fun, and it's opened up for us to continue to really build our portfolio here. But it really helped us. We are very good at making relationships, but again, if you're, power Zoom's great, but if you're on the phone or you're modeling from, you can't get that face to face. So it's been nice here because a lot of the brokers or management companies are partners that we work with. We can now have face to face. Funny enough, our apartment community that I have in town, it's actually probably about 1,000 feet from my office now. I drive by the least. Right, because I have a great team in place and everything else. And so proximity does not always have to be in the multifamily space, but what allowed us to get into this is that we found early on when, I was in New York City, I'd opened and sold a brewery, opened a restaurant there. I was in the bar world. That's how Pili and I met. We came in to New Jersey and really helped Dad. My dad has a heavy construction business that lifts and moves houses. So we moved out to New Jersey 2012 back to Westfield because Hurricane Sandy had just happened and his business just exploded.
Yeah, because they all have to lift their houses up.
Correct. So went out and helped Dad. It was a lot of fun. We did a couple thousand projects. However, we always knew that we wanted to find a way that we can control our day, control our outcome, control where we want to go. And as you can imagine, having 3 young kids, you have kids that are now, growing and grown, is that it moves fast. And if the day is driving you really can't dictate your next step, right? Because you're going on a service business. So everything I was in with the bar world, the restaurant world, and non-construction world is you have to do and continue to do, right? And so it was a short-lived point. I never wanted to fully be in that business, but it was really awesome to help Dad because this was what he wanted. Throughout that, it was really fun to see the success there, but we started to transition in real estate because we were finding that, again, we were in the service business. And we did what we thought was logical. We started flipping houses. Pili, my wife at the time, she was pregnant, was getting her real estate license, and we found that we were just adding activity, right? Because you're doing all these active things, and the thing was we were having good success. However, we were the bottlenecked because we're so busy with the construction world, so busy with the flipping world. We're just adding and stacking all these busy things that we're putting ourselves in position that we have to do, right? So the evolution in the multifamily is Pili met a person at a meetup who was investing out of state, and they were just doing single family. But we looked at that and said, that sounds very interesting. So really dove in on that model, and we ended up buying some duplexes, some triplexes.
So these were single family or two family homes, just weren't.
Correct. And so we did that. We started doing that in Indiana, right? And what we figured out pretty quickly is that, well, we no longer could it's 1,000 miles away, so we can't go out there and we can't do it ourselves, right? So we had to make sure the teams were solidified. So we did that. Lo and behold, we started getting checks in the mail, right? And it was that first experience that we were able to get back from the management side, the structure side, to put processes in place to allow the process itself to carry forward in the project, where I wasn't, or Pili wasn't becoming the bottleneck because we were putting too much on our plate. And that was great. That was really cool, but really learned very quickly that it wasn't going to be scalable to an impact, right? Enough of an impact to get us to the destination of setting our day and setting our time. So came upon large multifamily investing, and that was that.
You mean because that was so far away, or
if logistically, one of the great things about multifamily is that you have the ability to maximize on your economies of scale. Right. So if I'm buying a 100 unit, I can buy a 100 unit building, or I can buy 50 duplexes. 50 duplexes could be a logistical nightmare, right? Because you have to have people running all around town.
Right. You get a super to live in the building. And so, right.
Correct. And so for the large apartment building, we can treat it like a business where I have a full-time leasing person afforded by the property, a full-time maintenance person, so a full team. So it goes less from a mom and pop shop when you're into the smaller properties to a business that you can go in there and maximize. And what I found in the real estate, or in the going back to the restaurant days, is that I had a restaurant that was 12 seats, and I had one that was a couple hundred, right? They each have dinner that's only 2 hours.
Right.
And so I can only turn people so many times in a 12-seat restaurant. But I had ultimate upside potential on a larger restaurant because I could do so many things that could push the needle to maximize on the experience, right? And so that actually helped me drive back into the multifamily space, that we saw that the little properties were doing good, but it wasn't going to be able to make that big leverage to the change of our lifestyle. So we sold those off, went all into large multifamily. And from the year we sold them off in 2016, the next year we bought our first building, was a 94 unit, and that was in Louisville, Kentucky. And that was the first of about 20 acquisitions now, about 2,000 units in multifamily real estate across 5 markets, mainly in the Southeast.
Okay. And now and I've spoken to guys that, flip and buy and do different things. Some of them buy mortgages, they hold paper, they don't want to own buildings. Some of them are in like flex space, industrial space. Some of them are commercial only. So a lot of guys don't like residential real estate. What attracts you to, dealing with it? Is that a fair term?
Well, part of it is that I know my space. So although I own these properties, I hire third-party management that does the day-to-day. So I create the plan, I find the deal, I put together the opportunity, I make sure I align to have team members on our team that can handle the day-to-day, handle the leasing, handle the collections, handle the maintenance orders. That's not my foray. I go there to find the opportunity, maximize on what the business plan can be on that opportunity, and then find team members that can help us implement those business plans.
Right. So you're out there at this point. Yeah, you're not plumbing out a toilet and the building catches on fire. Maybe you got to go. But big major stuff just keeps operating because you have people in place.
Correct. And so I focus on the bigger picture to make sure the plan can be achievable by putting the right team members in place, and then moderate the plan as we go forward to adjust accordingly to whether it be the property itself and to the market dynamics. And that served us very well because it allows me to maximize my space. Because I talk about a property that's about 1,000 feet away and 90 plus unit. I have a management company here in town that runs that property.
Yeah.
I oversee the logistics of what needs to be done to provide the most value, not only to the property, but also to our investors.
Is the management company your company?
Not my company. I use it's we'll call it sub, but they're one of our external partners, right? So that would be a part. I have one here in Atlanta, and I have one in Louisville. I have one here in Nashville, right? So we use select partners in different markets where that's their space, because you treat the investment space and the management space, they're basically two different businesses, right? So the investment space, we're looking for that opportunity where we can increase the value of the building, whether it's on the property side or the management side, right? And then we put in professional partners that can accomplish that mission while we have this create better returns or in a better place to live for the investors and also for the tenants over the course of about 5 years.
No, the management company's dealing with evictions, because with 2,000 units, you always have to have some tenants that are in trouble. Right?
You look at your tenant base, and that's where we go into. And a lot of times we'll come into these properties that just haven't been managed correctly, whether it's just a poor management company or it's been handled by the mom and pop owner, right? And so maybe they've had handshake agreements, or they haven't qualified their tenant base there. And we look to provide a better experience. Because no matter, we predominantly invest in, we'll say, B and C assets. And so a lot of workforce housing, right? And just because they may not be the richest person out there, they still want a good place to live. So if you can go in there and
the last thing they're going to default on.
Correct. Yeah. And so if you can provide a great experience, you can find that tenants themselves will love to stay there and will be willing to pay more rent, because you've now made this a safe, affordable place to live, even if you've now increased the rent on them, because they see that you're making changes that are going to benefit to them in their lifestyle, right? And so where multifamily can be the most competitive, right? And really one of the best asset classes is that you have the opportunity to get cash flow, right? Your tenants pay the rent, right? Rent, of course, covers your expenses and your mortgage, which provides cash flow. You have the appreciation, which can serve to the market, but how we also make improvements to the building that will also improve on the value of the building based on the select improvements we make. We have the depreciation benefits, tax advantages. We have the diversification that you can get across, having 100 plus tenants that can pay down your mortgage, right? Now, also the other point, it now comes down to diversification across market, right? And so when you look at this across other investment classes, even other real estate classes, the reason it's continued to be the darling is that we have a couple of things happening. One, the simple thing to say is that everybody needs a place to live. That's easy to say. However, when you look at the downward pressure on where inflation has gone, where the rise up in, of course, prices have gone, the inability for people to be able to qualify for the mortgage and a mortgage to a house, and just the lack of housing, that leads a lot of people into multifamily. We need about 16 million units this decade. We're on pace to build about 11 million. We haven't met the needed demand since 2007, right? So we're continuing at a lapse here.
Know that. If that's nationwide?
Nationwide, across the nation. Now, of course, you're going to need a bigger infiltration in select markets, but you can't build enough. You can't build quick enough. And now things cost more to build. And labor's harder to come by. Supply chain is disrupted. So it's going to be slower for that housing to come on board. So it maximizes the replacement cost for your existing product. And it also puts upward pressure on the rents, where in terms of the rents continue to increase too, you just have to look at your tenant base to make sure that you can keep on par, where you have some markets like the Southeast on average of, I think it was, we had pretty much every major city tracked by some like the CBRE, which does a big report of like the 20 they tracked. I think all 20 of them were over 10%, with about 3 of them over 20% rent growth in the last quarter. Right. And you just have to track that's going to track with price inflation and wage inflation, right? Because just because you can increase the rent, you want to make sure your tenants have a moderate success to be able to afford that rent. Because
it costs you more if they leave, then you got to market the place, get it cleaned up, get a new person in there, you lose 2 months of rent, you're way behind.
It serves a point that you always want to be at some point of having vacancy. So like a 95% occupancy rate would be perfect, right? Because if you're at 100%, it means you're too low on your rents, right? So you're always going to have some turnover, but if you make select improvements throughout the process here, and you can quote unquote harden the units at the beginning, it makes your initial turn a bigger impact to cost. But it also produces the biggest upside in your income, right? Because you may have a $200 or $300 rent bump on your immediate. And then each time going forward, when you do, if a tenant leaves, now the unit doesn't need such a substantial impact to the renovation. And you may get $50 on the increase there, but you may only be spending a couple hundred to go in there and sweep and paint.
All right. I want to talk a little bit about the multifamily and who you have investing, but I was wondering what your background is. Like, how did you learn real estate? I mean, you were working with your dad's construction company, but that didn't necessarily teach you about the investing side of it. And, choosing a building and how it works.
Sure.
Where did all that come from?
I've always been open-minded to learn and see how others are doing it. And one of the best things about real estate is that there's nothing new. It's all been done and all been done before. So as we continue to move from one space to the next, it was constantly who is doing this and who is doing this successfully. right? And you use that advantage to yourself to see the model that they're working with. Why is that model working? How can we use that model as part of our organization, as part of our company to help us transcend, and then ask questions, right? So you surround yourself with good people in the space, and it really helps you carry forward to learn. And I can pull a lot of things, like everything from sales when opening businesses to construction when apart. It serves a purpose. And so if I was ever to delete this, the first pieces of the puzzle, right? Could I have skipped over, flipping and restaurants and all that? Most likely. However, all of those have added to our success here because it's given me life experiences about how to push forward in business and how to understand not only how to work with people, but how to look at the investment side itself in a way that can be beneficial, not only to us, but also to the investors we have invested alongside of us.
Here's a word from our sponsors. Looking to get into podcasting? Maybe to market your business for your own enjoyment or because you have a message you want to get out there. One of One Productions is a New Jersey-based studio just over the George Washington Bridge that caters to the booming business of podcasting. They offer a comfortable atmosphere using the latest technology available to record your podcast. And they are a full-service media company offering both audio and video production services, creating both audio and video podcasts as well as video shorts for business and personal use. Professional audio equipment packages are available through their website for all budgets. And be sure to check out their podcast guesting kit, created specially for our listeners. Care for your health, care for the planet, and look flippin' great doing it. North Authentic is a conscious hair care marketplace offering the cleanest brands from around the world. Their pro stylists curate only the most fabulous non-toxic hair products with better-for-you shampoos, serums, masks, and more that actually give you gorgeous hair without hurting your health or the planet. Hey, you've only got one life, one planet, and one glorious mane. Might as well treat them all as best you can, right? Try a 100% clean hair care routine prescribed just for you using their link in the show notes. If you don't see a big, beautiful difference in how your hair looks and feels, you can tell them they're crazy. Do you battle chronic pain, stress, anxiety, or depression? Well, if you take any supplements or you're interested in natural alternatives, you need to know about findyourhealthyplace.com. Find Your Healthy Place has thousands of supplements to help you live a better quality of life, as well as natural solutions for chronic pain, stress, anxiety, depression, sleeplessness, and much, much more. Need guidance? Use their live chat feature and talk to a wellness consultant right on their website. And be sure to use our coupon code TAE Podcast for all your purchases to get the best prices at findyourhealthyplace.com. Follow their links in the show notes to learn more about all of our sponsors. And now back to our show.
All right, so let's talk about how does one go about like analyzing the property? How, if you're looking at a building, let's say you're looking to invest, you're not the primary guy, but you're looking to put some money into a deal. So maybe it's 100 units. What kind of things should you be looking for to figure out if it's good for you or it's not good for you? What are the pitfalls, the traps?
Great question. First, you want to look at what's important to you, right? Not the deal first, because it has to be important to you. So are you looking for cash flow today? Is this money you have as investable income? Is this money that you are looking for a bigger return on potentially in the back end and may have limited cash flow, right? So, or am I looking for tax advantages? So answering questions of why you are looking to invest this money today is going to help you serve that conversation when you go to seek these investments. And say, myself, and I put out an offering to you, part of that question is you want to understand me, right? You're investing with me. So you want to understand the operator or the team, right? That's going to run this, because these are not typically they're not typically liquid investments. You may have your money in for maybe 3 to 7 years. So you understand who you're investing with. Do you like them? Do you understand their business plan? Do you understand the talk track? Do you understand how the investor process will work? Do you understand how communication will work, right? You want to be clear on who you're investing with. That's first for anything, because you can have a great operator turn a moderate deal into a huge success, and you can have a poor operator turn a fantastic deal into a poorly run operation. Understand who it is, who is that team member. Next would be the investment. Where is this? Why do I like it? Why are they picking this market, right? So why am I investing in Nashville, Tennessee? Or why am I investing in Murfreesboro, Tennessee? Why do I choose that market? Who are the supporting team members here that are now going to help us make sure that this is the most successful plan? What is the returns that will be offered? to me as the investor and how will I see those returns, how will distributions work. But it does start down one with you, right? So when we have investors, we do a lot of investor calls weekly. And it's less about me for start, but I want to make sure that I can answer any questions they have, but learn more about them, learn more about what they're looking for, what they're for, because I may not be the best person for them, right? If they have $5,000 that they may need for rent in 2 months,
Right.
I don't want them looking to invest with us right now. They have different parts, so we want to make sure that they're the right investor. Also, the same part that our investments can benefit them, and then we can talk more to the investment space and to ourselves as an operator and an operations team to see, so they can learn more about the experience working with Yarusi Holdings.
Now, are all your deals are basically syndicated, for the lack of a better term? You're bringing in accredited investors. It's not just friends and family, right? You're bringing in accredited investors. It's a Reg D filing, the whole thing.
We do Reg D filings. About 80% of our opportunities have all been syndications. The other 20 have either been us or partners. Just us or just one other partners where we just buy the opportunities ourselves. But we do Reg D filings, typically a 506C that does just offer to accredited investors. But
Sure.
We grew up in New York, New Jersey, right? So we had a lot of friends and family that were our initial investors. And, if someone can make $150,000 and not be deemed accredited, but still have the bandwidth to understand how to invest. And so we did do some 506B opportunities. We still do from time to time. That's just open to our general network, our Rolodex of people who are already in our bandwidth.
And they're run like a fund, right? I mean, they're a corporation, people own shares in the company. Is that how you do it? Or are they
similar? The fund model is more, it can be run in a couple parts, but the fund is that investors would invest into a pool, and that pool would be allocated to a number of assets. Through the syndication model, it's a single asset LLC that's set up for the project, where those investors know the project they're investing into. And on that front there, no, they can make a choice on the actual asset themselves. But it is like that. They will get shares or units, right, as part of ownership. So they will have equity ownership in the deal. They will not be a debt partner on the deal.
And they're like limited partners. They're like special member unit holders. They don't vote. They don't not involved in.
Correct. Yeah, it's typically Class A and Class B members, right? And we'll serve as the Class B members who will be the managing members. We will have all the voting rights, but we'll also do all the signing, right? We will be the guarantee on the loan.
Right.
We will be
signing the general partner, basically.
Correct. Yes.
For everything.
Correct. And so that limited partner themselves, their sole investment or tied to that will be their investment, right? So if they invest $25,000 or $50,000, that's going to be their tie as a limited partner to the deal, is that $50,000. But that will also designate how their ownership is broken out.
And are most of these projects funded with debt as well, or are they all cash?
No, so the opportunity to buy in cash, although could be beneficial in some cases, typically because of the cost of capital, partnering projects with debt, where you can put on a good debt structure for the project, will provide the most beneficial outcome for all parties. Because the cost for equity will typically cost an extreme, especially even now, more than the cost of debt. Yeah, so we typically partner this with leverage on the property, 65 to 72%, and the other part will come from equity.
Yeah, because if you raise $10 million and you're buying $10 million buildings, you buy 3 of them.
Correct.
Leveraging the debt.
That's the great part about real estate, that in most lights, like if you buy $1 million of stock, you got to pay $1 million. But if you buy, you have $1 million, you might be able to get a $3 million building, right? So your money can go a lot farther by the power of leverage.
Right. And the equity increase, if you get a 10% increase, it's not on the equity that you put in; it's on the value of the building.
It's exactly well said. Exactly.
A lot of leverage. How many people are in your organization now?
Right now, our internal, we have 5 people. We have 5 people as part of our team, 5 employees. Yep. And then my wife.
Okay. And what do the employees do? Are they
underwriter, asset management, office coordinator, market coordinator, acquisitions, and then my wife is investor education, investor relations.
Got it. But because you're contracting out the management, you just really need to touch base with the management company.
We work from everything from the brokers, the property managers. We will handle on some construction on projects, noting what it is. Typically, we'll roll in if there's heavy things anyway, from parking lots to roofs, we'll quote that out, or extreme parts of mini build outs,
Right.
some turns, typically things that aren't handled by the management company, we will serve. And sometimes things that are handled by the management company, we'll make sure we're quoting it out properly to make sure we're getting the price that's right for the property.
When does it make sense to, bring some of that stuff in-house, to bring in an in-house management company that's dealing with managers of different properties versus having, because I assume, right, you're not dealing with one national management company. They got boots on the ground everywhere. You got somebody in Texas, you got somebody in Tennessee, you got somebody in, you mentioned Indiana, or whatever. When does that start to make sense? Does it?
It does on larger operations. So the more institution you want to become, the more important it is to have the management in-house. The bigger part for the process with management is it is a whole separate business that you are starting. And it can be very area specific. Most management companies you will find are very area specific. So that our group here is just in Tennessee, they're not in different states. Our group in Atlanta, just in Atlanta, right? So they're very area specific, and it gives them the upside potential that they're very honed in to what that market warrants, and the consistency, the state regulations, everything that's going to serve that market and serve the investors who use them in the best light. So if you're going to be in a market, right? So our advantage is that, we're at 2,000 units now. Our goal is at 5,000 units, we would look to transition to management. However, that's going to give us a bigger infrastructure. Correct. And then that will give us a bigger infrastructure, but we do want to make sure that we're going to serve our properties in the best light, because we wouldn't want to have be the management company if we're in 50 markets. We won't be. We're very honed in to be in a few select markets, but you have to be very market specific if you're going to take that on. So more of a regional aspect than it would be a nationwide aspect.
Okay. I find that, the bigger real estate investors, the guys that do it for a living, which is what you do, for your business. You have a company, you have a lot of units, you have a lot of things going on. There's a lot of analytics involved. Did you at the beginning, put together a business plan? I mean, I'm sure you do strategic planning now, because you just said you're looking, okay, we get to 5,000 units. This is our goal to do it by this time and whatever. Do you do that on an ongoing basis? Because that's something I just was interviewed about, and I find is lacking with small business owners, is their failure to do any of that ongoing strategic planning. They just kind of deal with every fire as it flies through the door.
So that's a great question. It's funny enough, it's, as you can imagine, right? I've actually done a business plan. I did a business plan for our brewery, for restaurants. I've done it now for everything going forward. And even when we started on multifamily, for where we wanted to go. And now the goal with the business plan is that it's not the Bible. It's the point of the conversation that you look at it exactly as the starting point. However, you have to know and you have to understand what's happening, right? Because there's a point of a plan, implementation of the plan, and then understanding if the plan is not working to plan,
right,
that you need to pivot.
And without a plan, you have no idea that it's not working. Right.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of these calls. So every week we have calls with all of our management companies, right? And we don't just say, hey, we'll follow up in a couple months. Every week, right? Collections, leasing, construction, open items. All of those are targeted on all the calls. Why is that? Because these are big ships. You can do massive things, produce great returns. But if you let it get off course, right, with a bigger ship like this, it's much harder to get on course.
And you get a collection problem or whatever, right?
Correct. And so what's very important is to have the plan. So of course we have the business plan, right? Talk about getting to 5,000 units, right? We have now the next plan here, which is the property plan, right? Our investor plan. But even for that, we're continuing to look to improve our system and operations, even with bringing people on, right? The first 94 unit, it was just my wife and myself and investors, right? We did that for a couple of reasons. But in that same front, as you continue to grow, if I'm here on the podcast, I can't be underwriting deals. I can't be, if I'm not underwriting deals, I can't be working with property management. If I'm working with property management, I can't talking to investors.
Right, of course.
So I become, again, the gap. So as we've grown, we've brought more people in that can help sit in their best seat to help the business forward so we can all benefit from what's happening here.
Right. So you can overall drive the growth of the business and focus on the bigger stuff. Again.
Correct.
People don't understand that. Like Jeff Bezos might have swept the floor for a little while, but he doesn't really get involved in any of that stuff.
Correct.
You're going to grow. What are, if you looked as a business owner, or, I mean, you can do it from a standpoint of a real estate investor, but also as an entrepreneur along the way, do you remember couple of mistakes, couple of things you wish you did differently in hindsight that you learned from?
You're always learning. You can think of anything from a learning experience here, right? So it could be anything that, honestly, I talk to this, and this may serve in a different light, is that I was probably too conservative and cautious in our initial periods, and I missed out on some great buying opportunities where we would have been a lot further along. But I did it from a cautious state as a learning state, right? But there's a lot of opportunities, especially with the ramp up in the market here, where I had potential to take on more opportunities, but I slow growth it, where it served a purpose, but that now, of course, we could have been further along from where we were, right? So there's two parts. One, it could have been that. Two, it could have brought in team earlier on, right? So we started hiring later as we continue to grow. But of course, that was another stymie of our growth, is because we were so busy with our initial projects that if I had brought on team that could have helped us spread out the need of what needed to be done, we could have then looked at more opportunities, understood this was the best case forward, right? So those are some of the best parts, is that slow does not mean slow. There's the Jocko Willard thing,
right?
Yeah, the Jocko Willard thing, go slow to go fast, serves a purpose. But if you know the plan and process, you're just going slow to go slow, that's not always the best case forward.
Any mistakes in hiring, mistakes in picking an asset?
We've been very thorough in our asset selections and very market oriented. So we've been very dialed in on there. We've made hiring mistakes before. And one of the bigger hiring mistakes is it's okay to make the mistake, but don't hold too long, right?
Yeah, people do that.
That's where I failed on that part. And in terms of management, the same thing there is that you can start a relationship, and my dad used to say, like, you hire a plumber, by the fourth job they'll go bad, right? And so which can be anything, but management companies too, they can start out great. I had one, we had 3 great deals with them, and then the fourth one, they ended up having some internal disputes. The 2 owners had a dispute, and it went sour. And it started to affect their business. And so we had a transition, right? And so, sure, that happens, right? And so looking at it where you are today does not mean that the same competitive approach will continue to be beneficial down the line.
But no buildings you had to dump that turned out to be?
No, we've had 9, we'll be 11 to 2 more of the 20 assets we've acquired. We've gone full cycle, beating expectations.
Oh, okay. You mean projections, like you projected cap rates and this and that, and you're ahead of them.
Correct. Right. So, there's always tomorrow, right? But we continue to look at opportunities that are going to serve us. And we stay in a lane where we're not one day buying X, the other day buying Y. We're not buying, 1940s asset, then a 2000 asset, then an asset in, Wyoming, then an asset here. We buy in a select area for a certain reason, because it allows us to understand the market better and have better systems in place.
Yeah, the guys I know in your business that are successful do that. They don't get out of their lane.
Correct.
They buy distressed properties, they buy buildings, they buy, warehouses, whatever it happens to be, and they don't do it. You can't do it all over the country, because even if you have relationships with people, like you said, if they're too out of your area, too far away, you don't have your finger on the pulse, and you don't know when things are going wrong at their company. And there's
like a simple example, right? Like I would say, like, okay, sure. Like, how do you know if it's a good deal or a bad deal, right? I could give you a deal in Memphis that's $8,000 a unit, or one that's $150,000 a unit. What's the better deal, right? You would think the 8,000.
That's not enough information to evaluate.
Exactly. But it could be a war zone, but you think it's a great idea for 8,000, but it may be the worst idea because it's worth 1, or 0, right?
Or maybe it's not a great idea, but that's the only capital you have, so you can't do the 150,000.
Exactly. And the same part, you don't know. You could be on the wrong side of the street and be in a different school zone, and that school zone impacts your rents, right? You could be in an area where you're not understanding the tenant laws, right? So the further you're out, the less information you have to be able to make the best decisions for you and your investment and your investors.
Yeah, no, you can find out that the town has rent control, and you were planning on raising the rents over time. You can't do it. And
we have a mastermind for called 7-Figure Multifamily. We have about 75 businesses in there, and that's always the first conversation: is that you cannot invest in 20 markets. You let's start with 1, at the most 2, and identify those markets. Worst thing that happens, you find out that market's not right for you, but you learned all the steps to learn how to identify a market.
Go to another market.
Correct.
Yeah, but you can't be an expert in 27 markets.
No, and the best thing you can do is learn the process, because if you're trying to learn across 10 markets, well, you're trying to make relationships with brokers, learn how to underwrite properties, learn the market itself, put together teams, and you're trying to do this in all these markets. What if you could just learn to do it in one market? And if you find that it's not the best market for you, worst thing that happens, you move to another market, and now you're going to do it 5 times quicker because you already know how to do the process.
Right. Well, it's like niching down in any business, right? A lot of people think that if you want to be something to everybody, but it really hurts you if you're niching down and very specific about who you do business with and what you sell to what markets. You'll actually be more productive, and the asset will perform better, and you'll be better at what you do, and you'll produce a better product for the tenant, and they'll be happier and tell their friends, and the whole thing.
Most businesses start in one lane, and then as they grow and they get their process in place, maybe they expand to other parts. But one that start out to try and get 20 revenue streams in the beginning, you ultimately fail because you don't know where you're making your money. Because maybe of those, you have 16 of them are really losses, and the other 4 are providing benefactors to you,
supporting everything.
Correct.
Right. Well, you see, that's very common on the TV shows where what's the one on CNBC? Marcus Lemonis, where he comes in and he's helping them with business, and 4 of the stores are not performing, and one of the stores is really holding the whole thing up. The people are making money, but they're slowly going out of business.
Correct.
I think that's correct. You seem to have your finger on the pulse pretty much of certain markets that you work in. Well, what do you see from an economic standpoint happening, over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years in terms of, you mentioned it a little bit before, right? What's going on with housing and rents and so forth. But what are you anticipating? Because I'm sure it's affecting your decision-making and your planning.
The debt markets are interesting right now because the lenders are very uncomfortable because there's not really a solidified path to just keep saying we're going to do something until inflation comes down, right? That's what we keep hearing out there. And so same thing happened during COVID. And what you find is that everybody is uneasy until uneasy becomes the norm, right? And so what lenders do is we typically see an overreaction until it becomes commonplace that this is an uncertainty that we're in, and then they start coming back to the table. So right now we're seeing a lot of different changes in the loan environment, because of just so many different changes in the market. That will normalize and we'll go through.
That makes capital more difficult to get and more costly?
It's less appealing loan options, right?
Right.
However, we are still in an environment, right, where loans today are, they're about the same rates as when I started, right? So we're saying loan rates have gone up. However,
because they went down so far, right?
Correct. And so understand that what happens in the news does not affect everybody the same, right?
Not at all.
And even market to market, right? Like if you tell me the stock market drop, Dow drops 1,000 points, like my grandma doesn't know that, has no impact to her, right? She has no idea, right? And so to think that it's treated the same, markets will react differently and at different stages and at different times, right? So what's happening here, the closer you are to a primary market that has jobs, job drivers, population growth, right, diversity, you're going to have a longer stay than in markets that are more secondary and tertiary, right? They're going to be more impacted, right? Because you're going to see more things freeze up and tie up, and especially with the rise in rates and a rise in the lending rate, you're going to see business expansion slow down, right? At least for the term, right? And so that hits the pockets of people the further they get out from an environment where there's a lot of economic activity. So you want to really, again, get back to your market to understand what's the drivers here, right? Louisville is a good market, for instance, because Louisville, it's moderate population growth, moderate job growth. However, job diversity, it's got GE, UPS, FedEx, Churchill Downs, Humana, the Yum Center, right? University of Louisville, right? The Amazon facilities they have there. It's like there's so many different drivers there that there's so many different ways for that market to continue to excel because there's so many different pieces of the puzzle. There's so many jobs. There's not one job. There's not one job that if its impact is going to infect the entire economy.
It's diverse.
Correct.
Yeah. I also think a lot of the jobs have kind of spread out. We used to have most people living around major cities, but now with remote work, unless you're a bus driver or somebody has to be on the job, you can live in Nashville and work in the service industry for other companies that aren't in Nashville.
Correct.
So changed all that kind of stuff. Okay. So tell me, we've been talking for about 45 minutes. So tell me how people can, because you mentioned you do some masterminds and you're doing some stuff. Are you running masterminds and training people, or is this stuff you're involved with personally?
No, this is our mastermind. So Yarusi Holdings are a company, seven-figure multifamily is the mastermind. We started with two other friends of ours here in the market who have a very successful flipping mastermind as well. We have about 75 members, businesses, so it's more members than that, who are in the mastermind. And it's been great. We honestly teach them exactly what we did. This is where we were, this is where we wanted to be, and this is how we got there, right? And it's helping them understand to identify what they want, what they're looking for, how to identify investments, make the best decisions for that investment and carry forward to purchase assets.
So it's for guys that are already in the business or people that want to get into real estate?
We have every mix of this on right now. We have people that are either looking to change course, right? Maybe they're a pharmacist or they've, worked in a blue collar space. We have a lot of flippers who are now transitioning to other points. We have apartment owners who have bought small properties but are trying to understand how to buy bigger properties, and entrepreneurs looking for another stage in their life, right? So we have a very diverse group. That's really been awesome to see. And we've had the mastermind for about a year and a half now, and it's been tremendous. We have a ton of people just taking action, closing deals, and just understanding it, because it does start as a mind frame, right? It's a mindset piece at first, is that how can I buy that big building, or just the doubt of what the prospect is. But the more you can break down the pieces of a process to show steps and stop focusing on the bigger goal that they can't ultimately imagine right now, the more it can become achievable, because understand it's a step, right? You need to take a step today to get to a step tomorrow. And if you do those steps, have the accountability that's built here within the group to be able to continue forward, you have massive success.
Yeah. And if you learn from somebody who's done it, it's not so daunting. You look and say, how I can never own that building, but you got there. It's just a question of steps. Now, did you say you know Mike Simmons?
I do know Mike Simmons. Yep. Yeah. Mike is actually
that's not how we met, but ironically.
Yeah. Bill Allen, who through Mike Simmons, Bill Allen is our partner at Seven Figure Multifamily.
Got it. Yeah, I think I met Mike on a podcasting event, I think, at one point, and he was on the show, and then he introduced me to Tyler Jensen, right? Tyler does Utah Homes. He does some crazy flipping stuff. It's like a whole community there. Yeah. What's the best way for people to interact with you if they want to find you and learn from you?
So I'm Jason Yarusi across all social platforms, but to come learn more about the company, yarusiholdings.com, YARUSI holdings.com. You learn everything about us.
We'll put the links in the show notes.
Perfect. About the platform. Want to see about the mastermind, you can find that link there too.
All right. Well, I'd ask you for last advice and comment, but you've given a lot of it. And I appreciate your time. I hope you have a good weekend, and let's definitely stay in touch.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. Opening and closing music written and performed by Howie Moskovich and made to order music. For more information about Howie and his music services, please follow the link in our show notes. If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Amazon Music, Spotify, and most of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinhackerlaw.com. The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted by Mitch Beinhacker and produced by Beinhacker Law. If you'd like to learn more about our business and legal services, you can find us on social media or visit our website at beinhackerlaw.com. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.